Quality Management and Benchmarking presents Samvaad QMB, Conversations on Quality at Symbiosis International University.
Hello Symbiosis, this is Deb Sanyal. I'm joining you for another episode of Samvaad QMB, Conversations on Quality, Season 2, an initiative by the Quality Management and Benchmarking at Symbiosis International University, Pune. Today, our Samvaad revolves around a subject that is one of the most crucial yet oft ignored aspects of higher education environment across India. Now, and that is emotional well-being. Not just of the students, but faculty, staff, and each and every member of the university family. The emotional burdens of studying, teaching, or working at HEIs or higher education institutions are increasing rapidly. And therefore, the mind and soul needs a pause, a breather from the incessant flow of information that we process every day. SIU understands all too well how crucial it is that our students remain emotionally healthy. Well, to speak with us on these issues today, we have with us Dr. Girija Mahale, the head of the department at the Symbiosis Centre of Emotional Wellbeing at SIU. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Deb. At the outset, I would like to thank QMB and SIU for giving me this opportunity to talk and connect with the larger audience.
These are also conversations that are happening in an environment which may not be always very aware of this idea of emotional well-being. And you know, when the first thought that comes to my mind when I hear the word emotional well-being is unfamiliarity. I've heard about mental well-being, but that's not specifically what we are talking about, right? This is something different, is it? So how do we begin thinking about emotional well-being, and why is it so necessary to today, especially today, to start thinking about this topic more seriously?
Okay, let me explain this. So actually the name of the Center for Emotional Wellbeing, was a deliberate decision taken collectively by the SIU management as well as by our Chancellor Sir, Dr. Muzumdar Sir, as the name mental has a lot of stigma attached to it.
Sure.
Therefore, we thought that we will not use the term mental well-being, but we'll come up with a more socially acceptable term, emotional well-being. Now, what does mental well-being actually entail? Mental well-being, when do we say a person is mentally well? When a person has the ability to regulate their thoughts, emotions and behaviors, is able to cope effectively with the day-to-day stressors, and is also able to develop and inculcate healthy interpersonal relationships as well as develop resilience, is what encompasses mental well-being. Now, if I were to define emotional well-being, emotional well-being is a narrower concept, whereas mental well-being is holistic. Emotional well-being would involve looking after your emotions and regulating your feelings and emotions. So it's only dealing with emotions, whereas mental well-being would be beyond emotions. It would involve thoughts, behaviors and interpersonal social relationships as well. And why is it so important to talk about it in today's time? Well, as we are all aware that post-pandemic, we are living in an extremely volatile, uncertain, ambiguous and complex world, the VUCA world, right? Where change is the only constant. And the demands on us as human beings are ever increasing. And the resources we need to meet those demands are only limited. So therefore, we find ourselves constantly under stress, as we call it. And just imagine, if we are not at peace within ourselves, then how are we expected to be, being at our optimum or being productive, functional and having interpersonal relationships which are healthy? It's not possible. So therefore, it is very pertinent to now really consciously pay attention to our mental health, to our emotional well-being, so that we are able to, be our productive self.
Ma'am, this is quite interesting. You mentioned about how the mental health aspect is more comprehensive. And this actually then brings me to the next question, because when we talk about emotional well-being, what are some of the key factors of emotional that contribute to emotional well-being, and how can individuals sort of cultivate and maintain this emotional well-being for themselves?
Sure. So when you talk about emotional well-being, I'm going to use it in a larger context as mental well-being itself, because as I said, mental well-being is a more holistic term, and essentially we are dealing with mental well-being, not just emotional well-being through our center. So mental well-being is a complex issue, and there are a lot of factors that contribute to one's emotional well-being. We classically call it the biopsychosociocultural framework. So which essentially means there are some biological factors, some psychological factors, some social factors and cultural factors that interplay and contribute to one's emotional well-being. So when it comes to biological, one of the key factors is your heredity or genes, which so many of the mental illnesses are heritable. For example, depression or schizophrenia. There is a larger chance for the offspring to inherit depression if there is a family member or a biological parent having depression or anxiety within the family.
Right.
So heredity becomes a major. But there are other biological factors like medical issues or medical illnesses that can contribute to mental health issues, certain medications that can contribute to mental health issues, or head injury, because brain being involved can contribute to emotional health issues as well. Substance use is another very important factor, especially talking in the context of student population, where a large number of students do resort to substances, which can include nicotine, to alcohol, to cannabis, to hard drugs like MDMA or LSD or psychedelics, which could range from recreational use to getting addicted. And all this can contribute to a large number of mental health issues in turn. So these would be some of the biological factors. When it comes to psychological factors, what we're talking about is an individual's temperament itself. So for example, some individuals might be very sensitive, might be very, may resort to a lot of unhealthy coping strategies.
Sure.
Or there might be certain personality styles which make them more vulnerable to develop mental health issues. Like, for example, obsessive compulsive personality traits, where the person has certain very high expectations of themselves, where the demand is not from any external resource, but the demand is from within, which creates a lot of pressure on the individual and therefore contributes to poor mental health. Social factors is whatever is happening in your environment. So it could be your family environment, any experiences, negative experiences that you've had which are traumatic in nature, such as bullying in school or exposure to any form of abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, emotional abuse, which is not talked of because it's not very visible. But we do see a large number of students who come from emotionally abusive backgrounds, and even from parents who have been very neglectful of their children, which then makes them vulnerable to develop mental health issues. There are a range of social factors coming from financially disadvantaged backgrounds, coming from belonging to minority groups like LGBTQI plus community, or having learning disability. So all these factors could contribute or make them vulnerable to mental health issues. The cultural factors could be, the culture plays a very important role. So culture includes the way you dress, the kind of food you choose, your belief systems, your traditions, your value systems, all that incorporates your culture. And again, whatever beliefs a particular culture holds, that can also pressurize. For example, say a more stereotypical orthodox family coming from, say, certain parts of India may hold a belief that a girl child is inferior or a girl child is unwanted, and if the girl who is growing up in such a culture would develop low self-esteem, and that would make her more vulnerable to develop mental health issues. So culture also plays a very, very significant role, and especially migrant population also, people who migrate from one place to the other. To adapt to a different culture requires a skill set and a lot of mental resources, and if that kind of support is not provided to that individual, definitely the person is likely to succumb to a lot of mental health issues. The second part is, how can we cultivate emotional well-being? Well, there are several ways in which you can work on yourself. I would say that 3S. One is the self-awareness, where you are more aware of your own thoughts, you're more aware of your more emotions and your own behavior, because awareness is the first step towards bringing in regulation. Unless you're aware of your thoughts, emotions, behavior, you can't really regulate it. Right. So self-awareness becomes a key to emotional well-being. Second is self-care. And the way I would explain self-care is like it's more of prevention than of cure. So self-care is prevention, whereas coping is more of what you do when you're stressed. Self-care is what you do to prevent getting stressed. So it's like the fire drill, right? You call for the fire brigade when there is a fire, but the fire drill is there to prevent and to protect yourself whenever there is an emergency. So people should engage in self-care as a daily practice. And self-care is not being selfish. It does not involve a lot of time, and it could range from anything. Even sleeping could be a self-care activity. Taking a nap, journaling, meditation, yoga, walking. The third would be having good support system. Because remember, as human beings, we are all social. And with technology, what we are seeing is people are getting more and more isolated. And we saw that more during the pandemic, when loneliness was a very major factor that people encountered. And that contributed to exponential increase in the number of mental health issues that people faced. So having a good support system, whether it's with your friends, whether it's family, whether it's faculty, whether it's staff, whomever you find that connect with, whomever you feel comfortable talking to, and even counselors can become the support system for individuals. But so one of the exercises we always tell our students is, name 3 individuals that you can connect with when in case of a crisis. And they have to actually write it down so that it's there in their conscious awareness that, yes, these are the 3 people whom I can reach out to.
Self-awareness, self-care, and support system. Perfect. All right. But even then, I mean, the kind of factors that you told us about, the factors they're quite wide-ranging. Yes. And then addressing each of these factors, addressing all of these factors becomes a challenge. Yeah. So what are some of the critical inventions that we at SIU are sort of taking up to support individuals, especially when it comes to addressing these factors and sort of acknowledging these factors even?
Right, very good question. So as you rightly said, because the factors are complex and multidimensional, we need a multidisciplinary approach. So it's not just about having mental health professionals that you can deal with, but we need to involve all stakeholders when it comes to providing holistic interventions to students. Then only it's going to be effective. So within our team itself, we have multidisciplinary members. So we have psychiatrists, we have psychologists. We have psychologists in different specializations. So we have clinical psychologists, we have social psychologists, we have counseling psychologists who bring in different expertise. And we do involve students, faculty and staff in the interventions that we carry out. So when we started off in 2018, we were a handful of team members, about 6 to be precise, and today we are about 14 number. So the exponential rise in the number of team members is purely need-based. As soon as we set up our center, the way we set up our interventions, students were very forthcoming with their problems, because the services were made accessible to students, and we used a 3-pronged approach. So not just curative services like counseling or psychiatric services, but we do a lot of work in the area of promotion and prevention by conducting a lot of workshops, seminars, small activities, events, where each individual in the universities reached out to. A lot of newsletters go out via SKU as well. We have a major social media presence as well. So a lot of our activities get conducted on social media, because we know students are largely on social media, whether it's Instagram or whether it's what used to be called Twitter. And therefore, a lot of our activities did get conducted on that platform. So a range of activities and involving, I would say that stakeholder involvement is crucial aspect when it comes to engaging the community in all such activities, because otherwise, see, we have to understand that we are in a university setup. We are not a standalone mental health service. So it has to align, whatever interventions we undertake have to align with the vision, larger vision of the university. Therefore, all the initiatives that we undertake are taking into consideration what students want, what faculty need, what are the staff's priorities at this point, what are the challenges that they are facing, and together we can come up with interventions that then become more appealing.
Right, and see, this is such a crucial point in the sense that the involvement of the stakeholders, especially you mentioned that students opening up, coming. Now, one of the things that comes to my mind right away is that when you talk about mental well-being, emotional well-being, seeking help, seeking not even help, but also just like making a connection, even there are several preconceptions that are built into this. One of the things that comes off the top of my head is that we often say, oh, this is such a Western concept. This is not something that we as Indians practice or we as Indians need even. So what I'm thinking here is that one of the, and I'm presuming this, you might want to correct me, that one of the biggest challenges in extending these services or the smooth reception of these services comes in the form of these misconceptions, these stigmas surrounding emotional well-being. Can you tell us some of these stigmas, and how is that you face daily, and how is SIU sort of countering that or responding to that?
So there always has been a stigma around mental health, and not just in India, I would say globally. I have worked in Australia also for 8 years, and of course there is stigma that I've noticed even in that population. Some of the issues or misconceptions that I have encountered, especially in my career here at Symbiosis, is that mental health, mental illness is a sign of weakness, that people who get depressed or who have anxiety issues are not strong enough, is one of the commonest myth that people have. Second is about this generation of students, and I often hear this from faculty that हमारे ज़माने में तो ऐसे कुछ था नहीं, how come these children only have these problems? कुछ नहीं, this is just an act of laziness and an excuse to not meet academic standards or not commit to the core program. So they're using it as an excuse. Third is about the medications that we use to treat mental illnesses, and this is a stigma that is found even in students, in parents, in the larger community as well, that mental health ke liye medications, no. I can take medications for diabetes, I can take medication for hypertension for life, but when it comes to my mental health, tell me anything else but medication. When in fact medications are known to be quite effective, they work quite as compared to therapy, and sometimes we cannot start therapy when an individual is under severe depression or is facing severe anxiety, because they're not prepared. Therapy is hard work. It is a collaborative effort done by the client and the therapist, and it involves homework, and doing therapy happens in between sessions is how I put it. So they have to apply all the things that the counselor is suggesting in real life, and that takes energy and hard work. And if the person is already depressed and having low energy levels, they don't have the energy to work on their issues. That's where medication plays a crucial role, and we have to understand that it's a chemical imbalance that is contributing to the mental illness. As I said, there are biological factors involved. So to correct those biological factors, we do need medications, and they are not at all addictive. If used appropriately and in the correct dosages, they can do wonders and actually help an individual come out of an illness completely. The fourth misconception that we see is that counseling, it's such a layman term. Counseling is not about giving advice. Counseling or therapy is not about preaching, or it is not sympathizing. It is about being able to understand that individual, understanding all these factors as a person. What is it that is bringing this individual to me at this point in time, and how can I really help this individual in this particular time to overcome all the challenges that is explaining, which requires a lot of practice and expertise to be able to do it. So these are the most common that I've encountered. There are many, but
we are also thinking about a community which itself is so diverse. Like we are talking about students, we are talking about teachers, senior researchers, we are talking about non-teaching staff. All of that is there, and they are bound to have their own sort of barriers against moving towards seeking help. Right, exactly. So how are we tailoring our services to cater to these diverse groups, and how do you evaluate their effectiveness?
Right. So when we started off in 2018, we were predominantly focused on the well-being of students. So having worked in Australia, where I was working with an organization called Headspace, which works primarily in the area of youth mental health in the age group of 12 to 25 years. I was aware of the protocols that they had set up, and Headspace is a very popular enterprise in Australia. In fact, every small rural area also has a Headspace center, which is very accessible for the youth to come in. So some of the key things that they did to reach out to their youth were to make these centers located close to the railway stations, so as to make it very easily accessible for the youth.
Interesting.
Yeah. And secondly, confidentiality and consent. Young adults don't want to share what's happening for them with either their parents or with their colleagues. And having this information kept very confidential is very, very important for them. So one of the key things that we started off when we set up is setting all these protocols, where keep having a counselor at every campus made it very accessible for students to reach out. Secondly, having this confidentiality and consent forms in place ensured that the students felt comfortable enough to reach out to the counselor and share their personal problem, because it involves a sharing of a lot of personal information, right? Of course, there was a clause where if there were risk issues, where there was risk to either person's safety or anybody else, then we would make it clear to the individual that there would be a breach of confidentiality there. And the services were offered free of cost. So on all three aspects, it made it very easily approachable, and we immediately saw the results where students literally poured in and we had a waiting list of students for about a month. That's when we had to go up to management and say we need more counselors. And today at Viman Nagar itself, we started off with one, we have 8 counselors with a psychiatrist at both our campuses of Viman Nagar. Then coming to faculty, then we realized that it's not just students. And when students started reaching out and faculty started observing that students are actually benefiting from a service, they also started opening up. And we realized that, yes, age does matter here. For faculty and staff, we have senior people who are the persons to reach out to. So myself, the deputy head, who's also a psychiatrist. There are 2 senior psychologists in the team who have more than 15 years of experience working in the field of mental health, who then become the people to reach out to when it comes to the staff and faculty. Also ensuring to them that this will have no bearing on either their academics or their PAR, or that this will not be communicated to the management, and that so ensuring that confidentiality is maintained at all times is a strict protocol followed within us. Now it's a little challenging to measure outcomes when it comes to mental health, because mental health is very dynamic and it is ever changing. From day to day also you will find that our emotions keep changing, right? So it's very difficult to sort of measure outcomes when it comes to mental health. However, what we are doing currently is we are when the student reaches out first, there is an intake form that the student has to fill, which gives us a basic score of what problem areas does the student face. At the end of 6th session, we repeat one of the scales that we use to measure where the student is at, to see if the student has made progress in the domains where of problem areas, right? So that's one way of evaluating whether our service is effective or not. On a larger scale, the initiatives that we undertake in terms of workshops or preventive modules, we use a feedback form, a pre-test and a post-test. So what is there? So suppose it's an awareness session. Then we understand from the pre-test what is their basic understanding or awareness before the session, and post the session, has it really made an impact? Has the awareness, has the understanding on the topic really improved post that? This is a continuous process though, and we are constantly evaluating our services. We've also introduced from last year, we've introduced the emotional well-being screening. Because Symbiosis is a health promoting university, students do have to undergo a wellness checkup when they enroll for a program in a particular institute. All the dimensions of health are covered, but mental health was not being covered. So from this year, in 2023, we introduced the emotional well-being screening, which we kept it as voluntary because we don't want to force any individual to because see, when they enter an organization, that much trust is not developed, that connect is not yet there. So we do encourage them to fill out our screening pro forma, which is a Google document which we share online, so there is no issue of taking time from the institute for filling in the screening tool, and the student can do it at their pace in their leisure time. They just have to fill in the questionnaire and send it to us. And then we repeat this every year. So this is a pilot project that we are doing to understand whether all the initiatives that we are undertaking and the student will be exposed to through the year, whether it is having an impact. And the next year when we do this emotional well-being, whether it's actually created a difference. Because the screening tool we have devised the screening tool, and it's not just measuring whether the illness aspect, but it's actually looking at positive psychology also. So whether they have been able to, actually improvise on their emotional regulation skills, whether they are able to have healthy interpersonal relationships. So positive aspects of well-being are also being measured, and we want to see whether we are able to make that difference. So these are some of the things that we are doing in terms of evaluating our impact.
I remember when we were talking last time, you had mentioned something about, practicing what you preach or practicing what you talk about. So emotional well-being, what are your strategies for your own emotional well-being? What are the kind of music choices? Are we looking at web series choices or activities that help you as a person with the well-being aspect?
Yeah, very, very relevant question. And yes, of course, I mean, Dr. Deb, to be very honest, when I started off at Symbiosis, I did not really anticipate. Like when I moved from Australia to India, and one thing was clear in my mind, I didn't want to do private practice because I am a team worker and I like to work with people around me. So, and having worked in the youth mental space, when this opportunity came by, it almost seemed like a correct fit for me to be here working with the youth and working in a team setup. But as the work started expanding, I realized that there is a lot on my plate. And especially after the program was launched, BSc Mental Health, and that was complete change in the nature of work, because now I had to switch gears and become a faculty too, right from content creation to content implementation to managing administrative work. It felt very overwhelming, to be honest. And I realized that it's time that I take a pause, reflect on what am I doing. And one thing that I must admit is that I had to connect with what is the larger meaning here in my life. What purpose is it bringing to me? Because that's what motivates me and that's what keeps my passion going. So the larger meaning is making a difference in an individual's life, making a difference not just for students, to their families and thereby to the larger community. So that gives a lot of satisfaction to the work that I do, and that keeps me going. But there are a lot of other things that I do, and self-care is something I actively practice. So my routine, if you ask me, is My day starts off at 5 o'clock in the morning. Then, I'm into household chores, cooking, cleaning, etc. Then 45 minutes I dedicate to yoga. It brings me immense peace, and I can become more focused because I'm a mother of 2 children also. I live in a joint family. I have my in-laws staying with me, and then there is a whole job that I have to go through the day. So yoga helps me to be grounded. It helps me to focus and align my day, my vision to my day. After coming back from work, I need some time by myself because the day I'm talking a lot during the day. I'm connecting with different counselors. I'm doing counseling as well. I'm teaching as well. So there is a lot that I carry home and I want to offload it. So half an hour I go for a walk all by myself, where I'm deliberately not taking any phone calls. So that's my me time, where I'm just winding down. I'm also self-reflecting, like how my day has gone, what were some of the good things I did, what are some of the areas where I can work better. So these are 2 things that are constant, but taking time off, so utilizing my earned leave is a very important thing in my overall year planning. I do ensure that every 3 months, at least I'm taking a small break, utilizing my CLs, my ELs, weekends, ensuring boundary, work-life. I talk about work-life balance, but if I'm not able to implement it, then there's no use. So I do maintain that very religiously. And weekends, I will engage in fun activities, whether it's going out with my family or watching a movie, or I enjoy singing, I enjoy dancing. So all these activities I engage in over the weekend. So that keeps me going.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's all we have for today's episode. We'll be back with another episode, of course, with yet another Samvaad. Till then, goodbye.
Quality Management and Benchmarking presents Samvaad QMB. Thank you for your time and see you in the next episode.